All right. My name's David. I'm an addict.
Hey, David.
See, that wasn't so hard. I swear I was practicing that because I was afraid that's what I was going to forget, you know, like I was going to get up here and, I want to thank the committee, whoever they were, that asked me to come in from California to come to Atlanta to share. And I know it's called the NA Super Speaker Fest. I'm not a super speaker, okay? I've got 32 years clean, and I got a call a couple years ago, and it was dinosaur days, and they said, hey, you have over 25 years, we want you to share. And I said, I'd rather not, but thank you for asking, and I hung up the phone nicely. And then my wife said, what was that about? And I said, they asked me to share. You have to have 25 more years, and there's other people better, and I don't like doing that. I'm not good at it. And she said, well, maybe after 30 years or so, you should learn how to get good at that. Like, I mean, that's kind of like, are you that stupid that you don't even know how to share? When you've been going to these meetings, you know, week after week, you know, time after time, and you still don't know how to do this. So I'm going to try to do this for my wife too, that's stuck around, you know. And for anybody that's new out there, I know we're being recorded. If you're hearing this another time, if you're watching this, if you're live right now, if you're new, stick around. And I always say when I go to a convention, you know, like, oh, that guy's got the same amount of time as me. It's not gonna be that interesting. I like hearing the guys with like 5 and 7 years. It's, you know, it's fresh or exciting, but I just heard an amazing share in the other room where I think he had 47 years. And he said he's not a super speaker. He's just an eloquent man that talked about some of the history and what went on in Narcotics Anonymous. And he, you know, talked about Jimmy Kay and a bunch of other people, you know, and he had this wealth of knowledge. So I think this is an amazing event where, you know, I'm new. Like, I'm one of the younger guys. I'm looking around here, you know, these other speakers. I'm like, I'm young compared to some of them. Some of them have, you know, more time than I'm practically alive. So the reason the way I got here to this event, I mean, I won't start at my using days and all that, but my home group is in Danville, California, where I live, and it's a men's group. And we started it 20 some odd years ago. And a lot of weeks now we have 50, 60, 80 guys, whatever, show up. And it's 7:45 in the morning. And I used to pick the speakers for our pancake breakfast. So it wasn't like a committee. Like, it was really good back then. I could just pick speakers. You know, there were people saying, oh, you can't ask him. It's a group conscience. So I'd go around. I travel around for a living. And I met a guy, Michael T. in New York. And I took a red eye. By the time I got to the meeting, I was really tired. And it was an anniversary celebration. And I was lifted. My spirit was lifted. I couldn't sleep I mean, I was so excited about hearing somebody share New York style. And so he became their first speaker. He passed away last year, unfortunately, but he was living a great life, you know. And so then Gasolina was our second speaker. He was a guy that Michael knew. He came and shared. And then he said, oh, Domingo in New Jersey would be great. And before you know it, we got a hold of Stan. And I came out to visit Stan in Atlanta, make sure he was a good NA member and standing, and he definitely was. And he did great. And then Benji came out to share recently, like maybe 2 years ago at the home group. And so nobody's ever heard my tape because I don't have one. And they asked me to share. And so I'm here. And I'm here with a couple good friends. You know, my friend Joey, he's got, I don't know, he's got about 100 years. I don't know how many years, a lot more than I do. And his son, that's got 21 months. And that's Casey right there. And I texted Joey. I go, you're going to get a call from Atlanta, because they said, do you know anybody else from your neck of the woods that's got over 30 years that's got a good message? I said, Joey, here's his number. So I text him, you're going to get a call from Atlanta. This is like a month ago, right, or so. And so Joey was really excited because he knows that maybe I have a connection or something, and we're going to be going to the Super Bowl, in Atlanta. And so he's at the gym and he sees this Atlanta number, and he's like, all right, like we're probably going to be right on the grass or something. I don't know. David's got some connections. And all I got a text back. It said, F you. And here's Joey. And, and I have some history in Atlanta because I'd come here for business, and I'd go to this meeting called the Back Room. And it was like, oh my God, it was like the All-Stars, right? I'd do business downtown, and it was just like, it was like, I would be afraid to raise my hand because there was a wealth of knowledge, and people had their books. They're talking about page numbers. They're quoting literature. Their whole book is beat up. It's highlighted. It's like almost like you should get a book and highlight what it doesn't make sense to you, because everything's highlighted in your book. And I showed up one day, and they said, and our speaker tonight is David from California. And I had no idea. And it was like, I had 4, 5, 6 weeks to be nervous for this. It was like a month of nervousness popped up, and I've celebrated clean time here too, and shared at the Highland Club here, and I think that's what it's called, right? We went there last night, and this lady got honest. I mean, it was hard not to have a tear in your eye listening to this woman sharing that got honest. And when I went to the Highland Club with Stan, maybe 15 years ago, whenever it was, everyone thought I was new. And that's my subject. I'm sharing on helping the newcomer feel welcome. Stan takes newcomers around, right? They didn't know me, so they figured I was new, and I didn't tell them I wasn't. And I have never seen or felt so welcome into Narcotics Anonymous at that point. Like, I've always told my wife, if I ever send me to Atlanta and just send me over there, and I'll get clean there. A couple of weeks ago, I tried to back out of this. I've had heart issues, and I'm fine. I mean, I'm going to see my cardiologist again on Monday. I've had stuff done and whatever. And I gave a plausible but untrue explanation why I couldn't come here. And I told Archie, and then I said it to Stan, and then I called Joey. By the time I got off the phone with Joey, he's concerned with me because I was just freaking out. And I felt like if I come to Atlanta, that's just too much, and that's going to kill me. I was just in New York for 5 days in business, and that almost killed me. This isn't going to kill me. And I felt horrible, but I felt relieved. And then Archie called me, and he goes, are you sure? Like, this is short notice. You need to get, I said, I'll get somebody else. And then a tree fell in my backyard. And, and I'm not a guy that chops up trees or does any gardening or fixes anything. My wife would do that before I did. And I'm just saying, she's good with her. She's good that way. I get a gardener. And I decided to chop that tree up. And I stood about 3 hours. I felt like kind of Dexter, chopping something up in little pieces. And my hands were getting blisters on it. And I had gloves on. And my back was whatever. But by the time that was done, I hadn't looked at my phone for 3 hours. Hadn't talked to anybody. And before I went in the house, I texted Archie, I'm coming. I needed meditation, and I had prayer and meditation, on that portrait. And my wife was with me when I got clean because she left me for the 3rd time. And we're in San Francisco living there, and I'm cool. I'm working the clubs. I'm Davo, the doorman. I'm really cool. And she left me for the 3rd time. She she went out with this rock star guy, and he's 6'8", Rastafarian, beautiful guy, and I knew it was over. And she came back somehow a couple weeks later and gave me one last chance. It was my last chance. And I came to Narcotics Anonymous for her, and that's it. So I did the bare minimum, and I didn't get myself a sponsor or make friends. I'd go to a meeting right before I used, and nobody said I was doing it wrong. They suggested to keep coming back. They kept on saying, come back, keep coming back. And eventually, with no sponsor, not working a program, I'm clean, and I get the DA called on me in San Francisco. And lucky I was in San Francisco. They never checked anything, and I moved to Danville, where I live now, and I got myself a sponsor and made friends and did service and work steps. I've never stopped. I've never not had a sponsor. I've never not had a service commitment. I've never stopped going to meetings. But I didn't know what it felt really to be new. You know, at that point, I felt new with a little time. And so that's my specialty. I've been asked by some of these old timers, do you know so-and-so? Do you know so-and-so? I don't know people. I really stay to my own. I mean, I stay to my own. I stay to my home group. I stay to local meetings. I travel the world. I might know people in Skid Row because I go to LA, and I heard meetings are being shut down there. They don't have regular meetings now, but I met some great guys there. And I do service, but I do local service. And the best service I do is working with one guy in a car, in a coffee shop, going over steps. That's the best thing I do. That's my, I go into San Quentin. My friend Michael got me in and out of San Quentin. I went for years. It's great. I never got in trouble, that kind of trouble. And there's different service for me than going to San Quentin. It was awesome, but I always felt like maybe I should be doing something else, like, schools projects or something like that. And one of my specialties is staying in touch with you after you go out. I don't hang out with you guys. My wife calls it ANA, almost NA. Like they're almost in NA, like they're trying to, but they really don't want to. And I have some friends that I'm the last person in Narcotics Anonymous that's going to listen to them. I mean, I'm not going out with them. I'm not hanging out with them. I'm not going to the barbershop. But I'll listen to them. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion to the addict that found this program, got a little time or a lot of time, and went out. It's miserable. I mean, first meeting I went to, I stayed clean. I never even heard about anything to do with recovery. And I go to this meeting. This guy brought me to this meeting. It was a miracle. And I said it was religious. It's religious. And my girlfriend, who I'm married to, takes me to a meeting the next day and says it's spiritual. And so I feel for the newcomer that's coming back, or that's sitting at home and afraid to come back, or nobody will talk to them again because we shun them away. I fall in love with the newcomers. I really do. I used to figure out who was going to stay clean. Like I knew when they walked in who was going to stay clean and who wasn't. I was a fortune teller, NA fortune teller. And there's a guy, Mike, in my home group. And Mike today has 22 years clean, and he suffers from severe and late stages Alzheimer's. But we called him the relapse king. He called himself that. He went to a world convention and relapsed. He could not get clean. And he was a joke. I see him at meetings. He doesn't even know what his clean time is. We have to tell him he's got a coin in his hand. This guy started my home group. I was there and I went to area and got the stuff. He was the guy sitting at the home group by himself, with less than a year clean when nobody showed up and kept the doors open like you've heard around the world. He's the one that took Todd. Todd was a guy that would show up and he would have, he'd be beaten up, like actually bruises sometimes. He took Todd to get clean for a couple weeks somewhere and stayed with them. And Todd came back and I've seen Todd for 10 years as like a totally different person. And, Todd went out and died in his addiction. But Mike's got 22 years, and that's what his specialty was helping new people and would go to any lengths. So I don't know who's going to stay clean. And I think today everyone's going to stay clean. I'm a sucker. I'm like, you're going to stay clean. And my friend Roman has 11 months today. And I'm visiting my daughter at college. And I see this lost soul at an NA meeting. And he's lost. I'm smart enough because my sponsor used to tell me, don't raise your hand, get the Newcomers phone number. They never call you. Like, why do we put our numbers on there? He said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. Like, nobody calls. And so I got this guy's phone number and I left town and he couldn't figure out how to get off heroin. So my wife, who's a normie, but loves Narcotics Anonymous and what it's done to me and you and loves you guys. I asked if he could come stay at our house. She knew nothing about him and she said yes. And so he comes, he comes in the house, I sit him down and I say, you're not gonna steal like my flat screen TV. I don't know what people do nowadays. Are you gonna steal I put my wallet away, but I don't know what he's gonna do. He looks at my wife's Bernese Mountain Dog and says, oh, I'll steal the dog before the flat screen. That dog's worth $2,000. And he's got 11 months and we work steps together. He's on his 6th step. He called me yesterday and we're working steps. I have another friend that's, that we brought into our house. My wife has just graciously opened up our house to Narcotics Anonymous and to people. And it's a reason to have a house, sometimes. And this guy did well and he just wasn't looking for the similarities. He was looking for the differences. And, 3 years later, he's sleeping in his truck and I stay in touch with him. He's a good friend of mine. I just went over Tradition 1. I got a new sponsor 3 or 4 years ago. My life was chaotic. My wife wasn't happy. She sent me to therapy. I send people to therapy. She sent me to therapy, with 28 years clean or whatever. And I had a new sponsor. I worked my steps and we're doing traditions. And we went over Tradition 1, which has a lot to do with making the newcomer feel welcome. We say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, we're the most diverse crowd in the world, maybe, I don't know what else, where you see people of so many different creeds, religion, lack of religion, sexual identity, short, fat, tall, skinny, beautiful, rich, poor, everything, and I don't even care. People don't even ask much anymore. What was my drug of choice? That used to be around, a lot. Now I don't even know what people did. Sometimes you could really tell the pill poppers, right? But other times you just can't. And you guys could tell I probably did speed or something, or I don't know. But it doesn't matter. It really we don't segregate because of that. So we have the unity of that we had a drug problem and we came into Narcotics Anonymous looking for help. The selflessness, I wouldn't consider myself a selfless person. I'm a very, I love talking about myself. I should use we a little bit more in my little talk here, but I love talking about myself. It really is one of my specialties. But and I am very self-centered, and I think that's part of our disease, like what I did and how I harmed other people, and I didn't even think about it too much. So there's a lot of selflessness that comes around, helping new people. As a matter of fact, I would not even suggest that you put your name on a phone list if you're not going to return a call. Like that's, I sponsor maybe about 15 guys. I've sponsored about the same amount for about, I add one leads or whatever, but I'm a good sponsor. I'm not a smart guy. I don't know all the literature. I don't have all the suggestions that maybe somebody, I don't remember a lot. I'm pretty stupid, right? But I call people back and I make time. It's that simple. Like, that's why I'm a good sponsor, because I call my sponsee back. My sponsor answers the phone more than half the time when I call him. I call him a couple times a week. And it's simple, right? People come up to me and say, hey, will you be my sponsor? I got 5 years or 10 years. What's going on with your sponsor? The communication, right? So I love finding newcomers at meetings and getting their phone number. And I don't have a lot, but I always have a few on my favorites. And I call them and I check in. Every once in a while, they stop taking my call. You don't see them anymore. But it feels like I'm a soldier. It feels like I'm very close to Narcotics Anonymous when I'm helping somebody, and maybe it's just listening to the newest member. And then to see people get a little time, like 30 days. Or, I look around my home group and I've seen so many of these guys come in, from the very get-go, because now I guess I'm an old timer, right? With not maybe at this place, but in NA, at my home group, I'm an old timer. And it's such a joy to see people get clean and figure this out. Some of them get jobs, but it's not a guarantee. Some of them get a lover or married or a significant other, a partner, or some people just get a little self-worth and, or get their first real job, where they're making minimum wage and proud of it, like they're showing up. That's so exciting for me to see somebody the transformation of somebody that's maybe on the street or never did anything, was not a productive member of society and then became one. That is exciting for me. And, I love taking somebody out to breakfast or get them a meal or invite them over my house. It's I don't know what the percentages are of drug addicts that find it to our rooms. I don't know. I'm just guessing it's like 1 out of 10 drug addict finds themselves in Narcotics Anonymous. And then out of those 10 out of 100 that found it, how many stay here? This is a very simple program, but I just keep on, my experience is not everybody gets to stay here. And so there's a percentage. I don't know if it's 3% or of the drug addicts in the world find Narcotics Anonymous. And I travel the world, and I thank God our program is worldwide. I go to Iceland and they're speaking their language, and I go in the back of the room and it's a horrible meeting. Like, it's going to be a horrible meeting. Nobody even said hello to me. Like, they know I was coming. And all of a sudden I got up before the meeting and started hugging people. And 5 minutes later, it's the best meeting. It's the best fellowship. Like, those guys are great. And, and I've been to meetings like in Tokyo where that was the meeting I went to and it wasn't English, and they're looking at the ground for 15 minutes with no expression. You don't hear one word. And I really didn't get a lot out of it at that moment. I don't know why, because in France where I was, they did the same thing and I got something out of it. So I was walking away and a member found me, started speaking to me and gave me a hug, and it was exactly what I needed. I just needed one member to reach out. And sometimes that's the way it is with the newcomer. We, you know, like me, I hid, you know, and there's people still coming in and hiding. There's a in this guiding principles, the spirit of our traditions. In the first tradition, it has spiritual principles after each, you know, subjects and wording, and one of them is hospitality. And I think with the hospitality, it's sometimes the cookies and the coffee, you know, but other times it's making people feel welcome. Like when I went to the club last night, the Highland Club, you can't go through there with, if you don't feel welcome there, then you must be going through the back door, because they're hugging you, they're loving you, you know, it's a lot of enthusiasm just walking through the door. If you felt alone and that was your first meeting, you get to know everything you need to know about Narcotics Anonymous. By the time you get in there, I swear, it's like you are not alone. So I told you I sponsor all these guys. Malcolm is my favorite. I just say that. Hopefully none of my sponsees watch this, for God's sakes, besides Malcolm. But, you know, nobody cares that Malcolm's my favorite. Like, you could pick Malcolm. Nobody says, oh, why is Malcolm your favorite? They just know it. But I saw Malcolm. He was as skinny as a pole, I don't know, 19 years ago. And I had a toll-free number that rang to my house, because my office was at my house. And he was in some detox, this horrible detox, and the building was condemned shortly after in Richmond, California. But he goes, they brought him to like a Unity Day, and he had a week clean, and everybody else got off the bus except for him. He's standing there. So I gave him my toll-free number. He says, I need a sponsor. He asked me because I have a toll-free number. And Malcolm was like, I was sponsoring guys, but I've never found anybody that was like, man, if you don't do these steps, you're going to die. Like, I can't picture anybody getting any worse than you and being alive. And every week or two, like, I got to just sitting in this detox. They called it I think it was like a 3-month detox. And he's just sitting in there working steps. And every week or two, like, come back out and get me and let's work another step. And my home group was about 5 or 6 guys from my town, and we're all, dads with kids and this and that. And Malcolm finally got a car. He got a $500 hoopty, and he started driving in from Richmond to Danville, where the group is, and the group changed. And it actually grew drastically at that point. It wasn't like, oh, my kid, in the soccer thing, or our little problems. Became a diverse meeting. And it wasn't just, white guys with, that have kids, whatever it was. It became this amazing meeting. And Malcolm did, there's one of my friends, a guy sponsor, he has a Maserati, but he had a guy in there last week that was detoxing and pooping his pants. It's like, it doesn't matter what your car is. If you got a car, you put somebody in there and you help them get a ride, This guy at the club yesterday, this guy that's struggling to stay clean rode his bike. And I don't know where he came, but he rode his bike to the meeting. That's great. But if it rains, maybe we need to pick him up. And I'm sure they will around here. The best thing I ever did in recovery, this is the best thing I ever did, okay? I'll toot my horn. I brought my family I put them in my wife's fancy car, and we went to Richmond, and I took them in to meet Malcolm, this guy that I've been talking about. And my kids get out, they're really small. We go out, we go into this should have been condemned building, and introduce my family to Malcolm, and he'll never forget that, and neither will I. I've had a few sponsors, over my time. Like, I had a sponsor that moved to another kind of group, and now he went out and used. I have a sponsor, that another one that moved. He said I had to get a local guy. I had had a great sponsor, and we moved on. And my current sponsor is an NA soldier. You know, like everything that I need to learn, he's a predecessor. He's got half my time. He's got a little more than half my time now. He just passed it. Dang it. But he's a predecessor. And I looked up the term predecessor. It doesn't make sense. But to me, he's a predecessor. He has done things that I haven't done, and I want to learn from him. And every time I try to pull one on him because I have more time, he reminds me that he's my sponsor. And we don't sponsor each other. He sponsors me. I've only got a few more minutes, and I can't believe I've taken the time, you know, that I was worried about. I'm never going to be able to talk enough, but people that know me knew I could talk enough. I was on a committee for the Band of Brothers, a men's NA convention. It was the first annual in San Jose, and it was like supposed to be like Circle of Sisters, and we had 700-800 people, so 900 people show up. It was really amazing. And there was a guy named Jeffrey that was that we did service together, and we had it out really bad. It was PI at the time, and I hated the guy, hated him. I actually stole one of his sponsees. Like that was my acquisition. Like I was like, and if you know, and if Tim, if you're watching this, it was all worth it. Tim and I have stayed in touch, and he's new again. And but I've always stayed in touch with Tim, and I've been the last guy in NA that would talk to Tim. And I always encouraged him, say, get off that stuff. But Jeffrey was dying of something, and I happened to be in LA, and I was the closest member. I showed up with a candy bar in emergency. He was astonished to see me. He couldn't believe it was me. And then I didn't know what to say because I hated this guy, but my sponsor made me go, and I showed him the candy bar. He said he's diabetic. Am I trying to kill him? And we talked for about 10 minutes. And it was over. It was like we loved each other ever since. We never had another word. We decided never to do service together. But, you know, and he passed away. And at our convention, we were selling at the alternative room all those old T-shirts and stuff. And we had some newcomers come in and help sell them. And it was like impossible not to cry, you know, when I was watching, you know, they were selling Jeffrey's T-shirts. They didn't just lay them on the table. They're like, this one's from Australia, and this one's from whatever. And we sold all of his stuff. And but those guys, you know, the newcomers, I told them about Jeffrey. You know, what a great man he was. And I feel like he was like Mother Teresa with a bad attitude sometimes. But everyone would say that. And I'm so grateful for NA. I don't feel like I have 32 years. I really don't. I want to thank Atlanta NA. I want to thank you for all the years whenever I've come by to make me feel welcome. I hope that my wife would be proud of me that I stepped up and I did this. You know, for a woman that has let NA in her home and in her life, the last thing, we're in New York. She's been going to meetings with me for 32 years. We're in New York. It's this great meeting, like 10, 12 people in a big circle. And she goes, oh no, I'm just with David. They go, we want to hear you share anyway. She's been holding this Sharon for 32 years. I mean, oh my God, it was just, I cried like a baby. She was so thankful to you people, you know, you people that helped me. It was just the most amazing thing. And she was, you know, she's had it with me many times, but every time she sends me back to NA to work some steps, you know, and I always become a better husband and father. And thank you. Thank you very much.